Friends, this is Pastor Benny Tate, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to our Leads Club podcast. It's just a podcast that's about personal growth in your life, developing your walk, developing your leadership. I am convinced that we can't be better and do better till we know better. And hopefully through this podcast, we'll share some principles that will be beneficial to you, because the principles we live by will determine the world that we live in. And so we're trusting that this podcast will be a help to you. You're in for a treat today because our guest host is one of my very best friends in all the world. He's the pastor of the great church, Stockbridge Community Church. I love him deeply. Jeff Daws, welcome to the Leads Club podcast. It's an honor to have you.
Pastor Ben, it's such an honor to be here with you and all the people that are listening. What an honor it is to be with you today. I was just thinking on the way down here of our relationship and how that it's been about 6 years ago that I made a call down to Rock Springs Church and asked your secretary, could I have a meeting with you? And I was expecting her to give me the runaround, but she said, absolutely. And I was shocked and taken aback. And I fulfilled that meeting. I came and you actually, I asked you for 30 minutes. You gave me 45. And you said, maybe we can do this again. And so I went into the parking lot after our meeting and called your secretary again from your parking lot and made another appointment. And it's just been a wonderful relationship since then. So thank you so much for having me, Pastor Benny, and pouring into my life the way you have. You know, you and I were talking as we travel a lot together. I get to travel with you, and you're always sharing those nuggets with me that are just so rich and so deep. And you've helped my church to grow significantly over the last several years. And so that's how this has come about. I asked, could I interview you that we could share some of those thoughts today? So as we get started, Pastor Benny, I would just like for all the podcast listeners to know basically a little bit about how you guys started. Because you didn't have a father that was a pastor.
No.
Matter of fact, you didn't have a father at all in your life. And how did you come from that setting to where you are now?
Well, Jeff, it's pretty amazing. I've often said I wasn't groomed to be a pastor. I wasn't groomed to be a preacher. Actually, I did not know who my father was till I was 30 years of age, raised very dysfunctionally. And there's been a lot of times I look back on my life and I thought, boy, I wish I would have had this godly father. I wish I would have had this godly upbringing. But you know, Jeff, I'd probably connect with some people that I wouldn't connect to had it been that way. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying God's got a plan. And again, I was from a very, very dysfunctional family, and we lived in nightclubs. We sold whiskey illegally. We were just as dysfunctional. We put the funk in dysfunction. And but God did a work in my mother's heart. God saved my mother, and to be honest with you, my mom has a sixth grade education. So Mom didn't teach me a lot, Jeff, out of the Bible. She didn't sit down and say, this is what the Bible means here. But I saw transformation. I saw a difference in my mother's life. And it caused me to have a desire to want to come to know the God that she knew. And I still believe that principle. I am convinced, Jeff, that there'll be very little change in an individual's life until they see an example. They see 89% of everything we learn is visual. And when they see a visual example, they see flesh and blood, and they see it fleshed out, I believe then people can grab hold of it. I believe it gives people handles. And my mother just showed me with her life that life can be different.
Wow. So, Pastor Benny, as you were growing up, and of course your mom having that change, so yet that's still so far away from being a preacher. So
right.
No preachers in your family, no example. All you've seen was taverns and saloons and things of that nature. How then? What actually triggered to say, maybe God's calling me to preach? How did that all happen?
Well, after I became a Christian, one night about midnight, I became a Christian and just literally started trying to read the Bible. I really didn't have anybody to help me to understand the Bible. It just came to my heart that I was supposed to preach. If you said, now, Pastor Benny, did you hear this audible voice that this is how I know I'm called? No, I didn't. I didn't hear this audible voice, but it came to me, Jeff, and it would not leave me. Mm-hmm. And Jeff, I'll often say it wasn't something I was seeking. Mm-hmm. I never had a desire. If I ever wanted to be anything, I wanted to be a lawyer. Yeah. I didn't want to save them. I wanted to sue them. I didn't. But it would not leave me. It stayed with me, Jeff. And so, and I just finally said to my mother that, that I believe I'm supposed to preach. Mm. And she said, Benny, we've got people in the family that are in prisons. We got a lot of them that are in jail, but none of them in pulpits. Mm. So this would be something new for our family. And Jeff, I would say to our listeners today, maybe you weren't from, maybe your grandfather wasn't a pastor, and maybe your dad and mom weren't bedrocks of the church. But I want you to know God wants to use you also.
Yes.
God takes your past. God takes your past, and he uses that in your future. He takes your experiences, and he uses that in your future. And I think because of my background, I've been able to relate to a lot of people, Jeff, yes, that otherwise I could not have related to. Been relate to a lot of children that maybe have a difficult upbringing. I had a difficult upbringing, and I say to those children, you can't overcome that. God's got a plan. God's got a purpose. You just hang in there.
Pastor Benny, as I walk around the Rock Spring campus or drive around it, you can't just walk around it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I see that. As I've got the chance to get to know you and listen to you, the things that I see around the campus, I see out of your past. Maybe you want to speak to that.
Oh, without a doubt. My mother was in an abusive relationship. She was in an abusive relationship, and I remember a man saying to my mother, when I get through beating your face, and my mother's a beautiful lady, when I get through beating your face, no man will want you. Mm-hmm. No man will want you. Well, because of the hurt that my mother went through, we have a ministry here, if you walk around, called the Potter's House. Yeah. It's a ministry. We have facilities where ladies that have nowhere to go, that have maybe battled drugs, alcohol, perhaps been in prison, been in jail, get out, they have nowhere to go. We have that ministry called the Potter's House. Jeff, we were very poor. I often say it was oatmeal, cornmeal, miss a meal. We were very, yes, very poor. And that's why, like here on our campus, we have a medical clinic. Because I know what it is not to have any insurance. I know what it is to have a sick wife and worrying about how can we pay the bills? How can my wife get treatment? And so we have medical clinics. We actually, at Rock Springs, we have 3 medical clinics, one in Forsyth, one in Griffin, Georgia, one here in Milner, Georgia. I am convinced many times your passion will come out of your pain. Your passion comes out of your pain. And so, the pain of life can be good. I think it can be the greatest motivator in your life to help other people.
Pastor Benny, it's so interesting because a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are pastors. Mm-hmm. And many times, mm-hmm, a lot of pastors, we just don't say, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to preach the gospel, but what is my mission? What is my purpose? And so, watching you and others, it definitely, a lot of that comes out of your past. What would you say to that pastor who's right now is like, okay, I'm preaching the scripture, but I really don't have a passion? What would you say to him?
I would say to him, first of all, that God has a plan. God has a plan for every ministry and every pastor. And what I would say to that pastor more than I would probably say anything else, be yourself. Be yourself. You can't take somebody else's vision as your vision. The Bible tells us in the book of Habakkuk, write the vision and make it plain upon tablets, that he may run that readeth it. It tells us in chapter 2 to write the vision, but in chapter 1 it says this is the burden that Habakkuk had. I would say that, Pastor, where is your burden? Mm-hmm. Your vision is going to come from that burden that God has placed on your heart. Mm-hmm. And I would just encourage that pastor to get along with God. Look at where he's burdened. Look where he's burdened. And that's a good indicator of what God is wanting that individual to do as far as visionary for that church. And I think that will be helpful.
Pastor Ben, you just said something that I think is so critical that I would like for you to talk a little bit more about. Be yourself. What does that mean? Like, did you go through any kind of personality or crisis or anything, identity crisis?
Unequivocally, Jeff. You've got to understand. When I started in ministry over 4 decades ago, I was from the hills of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. I actually got saved in a little place called Hubbard's Cove, Tennessee. A tornado went through there and did $50,000 worth of improvements. I'm just, you got to, yes. And being from rural Tennessee, Jeff, I had South in the mouth. Still do, by the way. But I had South in the mouth so bad. And Jeff, here's what was amazing to me. I despised my voice. Mm. I despised somebody's, Pastor, did you listen to yourself preach a lot? No. I didn't, because I didn't want to sound, Jeff, like I sound. Mm-hmm. But you know what's amazing, Jeff?
Tell me.
We're on many radio ministries and da-da-da. And people will say to me now, what distincts you from everybody else, or that we might listen to on that radio station, is your voice. Mm. What I'm trying to say to that listener today, to that pastor today, what you dislike, maybe even a harsh word, what you hate about yourself may just be what God uses. Mm. It may just be what God uses. Jeff, one day you and I are going to stand before God. We really are. And every pastor listening to me today and Christian leader is going to stand before God. And God's not going to ask me, why wasn't Billy Graham? He's not going to ask me why wasn't John Maxwell or why wasn't Max Lucado. But I often fear, Jeff, what if he was to ask me, why wasn't you Benny Tate? Mm. Why wasn't you who I made you to be? Mm. And it took me a while, Jeff, and I would say to that young minister out there, it took me a while just to accept who I was.
Let me ask you, how did you discover you?
I think the way I discovered myself, Jeff, is realizing that God uses us in spite of who we are. Mm-hmm. That is to say, everything about me, when God called me into ministry, he already knew it. Mm-hmm. He already knew it. And he didn't want me to be anybody else. He simply wanted me to be me. And Jeff, it was years into my ministry. It was years. For a while, I wanted to be this guy, and I wanted to be this guy, and I wanted to pastor like this guy, and I wanted to speak like this guy. It was years into the ministry when I started realizing, you've got to accept who you are. You've got to know who you are. And then you've just got to be who you are. What was the guy said, be who you is, because if you ain't who you is, you ain't who you is, or right. Something like that. It's just talking about, just be who you are. Mm-hmm. I would challenge that person out there today, Jeff, that pastor, be the best version of you. Mm. Be the best version of you. You develop yourself. If you're a communicator, you study communication, you listen to great communicators, you read books on communication, but basically you say, Pastor, I want to get better. Well, you just got to communicate. You just got to get in there and do it, and have some secret shoppers along the way that will love you and give you constructive criticism.
Right. Absolutely.
And to help you to get better, be the best version of yourself. And Jeff, that's really what I would challenge. I would challenge even our listeners today is to never stop growing. Never stop developing. You're listening to a podcast today. Keep listening to podcasts. Keep reading books. Keep growing. Keep developing. Keep being the best version of yourself. Because here's the catcher. You simply can be the lid on your organization. You're the lid on your organization when you quit growing, when you won't push through that pain threshold. And so, read, grow, expose yourself. Jeff, you told me, you said, I called you, Pastor Benny, and I just wanted to come down. There is something, look, Jeff, I believe as people are listening to this podcast today, we're adding. But I believe when you get in the room, you multiply. There's things that can be taught, and hopefully we're teaching some things today, but there are things that can be caught.
Yes.
And I just encourage that person that's listening today to go where you can catch it.
Yes.
Go where you can catch it.
Yes. Well, Pastor Benny, we have a few more minutes before we end our podcast today, and man, how rich this has already been. I mean, it's just so, thank you so much for just being so transparent. It just means so much. But we're coming up on the Easter season, Pastor Benny.
Yes, sir.
We're about 6 weeks away. What is a person like you, a pastor like you, thinking right now about Easter? What's in your mind?
Hey, I'm just talking to you like just before I came to this meeting, I gave my assistant $100. And I said, I want you to get me 20 Easter shirts. 20 Easter. They're $5 a piece, Jeff. They're $5 a piece.
Tell us about the Easter shirts.
Oh, yes. We have them printed Easter at Rock Springs. And we offer them about 5 or 6 weeks out.
Okay.
And Jeff, it's just a walking billboard. It's a walking billboard. And I encourage our people to get their shirts, wear their shirts. I bought some because I want to give some away. I mean, Jeff, the Sunday before Easter, Palm Sunday, we encourage everybody in our congregation, everybody, to wear your Easter t-shirt. Now, some, I've got a jacket on today. Some try to dress it up a little bit, but some don't. But we wear the Easter t-shirt because I know you're going somewhere after church service. It may be a restaurant, it may be somewhere. And it's a wonderful opportunity just to spread, just to invite people to Easter services.
So that our listeners can get this. So basically, they still got time to do this. You can have T-shirts ordered and printed, and I know that you guys do them for about $5 a piece.
That's exactly right.
And then you sell them to your congregation.
Sell them to literally, Jeff, the congregation lines up. We do a different color every year. I think it's green this year. But they line up to get the Easter shirts, Jeff, and again, they wear them, and it's an opportunity to invite. Jeff, as a pastor, I will buy 5 or 6 of them, and the week of Easter, if I don't have a funeral or something, I have to dress appropriately. Every day I wear my Easter shirt. I mean, every day you say, he's coming into work with his Easter t-shirt on. I'm coming into work because I want to keep that emphasis. Jeff, 80% of church growth in America takes place from January 1st to Easter Sunday. So, Easter is paramount. Yes. Easter is paramount. It's here in America, it's built in, it's built in, it's still acknowledged. People go to church on Easter, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to share the story.
So give us one more thing that you will do at Rock Springs this year, the T-shirts, one more thing.
Jeff, I'll tell you something that's very, very powerful. I challenge our people to use their social media platform. That's simply to say, record you and your family. You and your family sitting on a couch, and you're inviting all of your friends, all of your social media network to join you in church on Easter Sunday.
So you actually encourage your people for them to record themselves.
Yes.
And for them to invite everyone. That's a great idea.
Jeff, it works. It's exploded for us. Jeff, you're going to film something at your church. This is Pastor Jeff Daws. We want to invite you to Easter Sunday at Stockbridge Community Church. Well, Jeff, what if all your people do that? What if all, and their sphere of influence, you go from adding to multiplying. Jeff, it is simply powerful. It's just a practical thing that we encourage people to do. that I promise will make your Easter attendance better.
Wow. I want to tell you that this Leads podcast is amazing. Pastor Benny, I know that you have written a couple books already, Defy the Odds, and Unlimited. Those have been wonderful books. But I've been asking you for a long time, when's the leadership book coming out? Have you thought any more about that?
Jeff, I have. I am so excited. My leadership book will come out the 1st of November. Jeff, it's a different book. You say, well, Brother Benny, there's so many leadership books out there, and I agree. But my book is entitled, Yes, You Can.
Wow.
It's kind of a trilogy off Defy the Odds, Unlimited, Yes, You Can. And what this book is about, Jeff, it is about that everybody can lead. I want you to know, the most introvert person in the world, they say, will influence 10,000 people over the course of a lifetime. This book is about how that housewife leads. It's about how that department store worker leads. It's about how that convenience store operator leads. It's about how that pastor leads. It's about how that construction worker leads. It says that God has given leadership to all of us, and it gives practical ways of, yes, you can lead. And this is how you will lead and be better equipped to lead.
Wow. Well, I look forward to reading it and being a part of it and talking about it and sharing it with my friends. Well, Pastor Benny, thank you so much for your time today. I like this format. I like this. I've enjoyed myself, and thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast with you and hosting this today. And again, we just want to remind all of those that are listening today that they can find you. Where can they find? If they want to contact you,
simply go to bennytate.info. bennytate.info, and all of our materials there. They can follow us there and keep up with everything we're doing. Jeff, I want you to know, I say to you and to our listeners today, we rehearse nothing.
Right.
I mean, If you said, like, it's great how you've gone through, and listen, we rehearse nothing. We walked into a room today and we sat down.
Right.
Jeff, I'll tell you what I'd like to do. I've enjoyed this, and I mean this. I want us to do it again.
Let's do it again. Well, listen, if you've enjoyed this podcast, why don't you share it with someone that you think that may benefit from this. You will do them a great service. I know, Pastor Benny, you share podcasts with me and from other leaders and so forth. And so I just want to encourage you today, if this is spoken to you, please share it with someone. And it just means a lot to us if they would do that. So thank you so much again for being a part of this podcast. Anything you want to say before we
close?
No,
Jeff, I want to say thank you, listeners. I thank you for being with us today. I look forward to being with you in the future. And I truly believe we're going to share some practical things that's going to give you handles for growing in your walk with Christ. God bless.